Hey, Twisted listeners, I'm Cindy,
And I'm Diva
and this is Twisted Listers, a podcast about murder.
and Bliss.
And I was just telling Diva, and then I was like, let's record this so I can say it on the podcast. I listened to I was editing our episode, and oh my God, last week you can tell that I was like literally dying of sickness because you're telling me this amazing story, and I'm like, uh huh. Uh-huh. You're like, "And then they cut his head off," and I'm like, "Uh-huh." Like, I was so dead, like,
You were
oh my god.
floating on a cloud
I
of ailment.
I was. I actually
Yeah.
sound worse now, and I'm, coughing a lot, so if I cough, I apologize, you guys. But, like, my energy's back up, I feel much better. I just listened back to it, and I was like, "Oh my god," I was, like, barely hanging on. So, I wanted to take this moment to make fun of myself for being, like, so fucking out of it. Um,
Oh.
anyway, this is a new list. We're here to talk about murder. And what's this list? This list is small town murders, which I
Mhm.
chose. I was
Yes.
inspired by the serial killer that was in my hometown of Davis, which is
Mhm.
a small town. I did not choose that murder or that serial killer, those small town murders, because it's too fresh, it's too new. We
Too
need time
fresh.
to
Need more
collect.
info. Yeah.
Mhm. It's also very sad. I mean, all of them are, but it's just weird, like, having grown up in a small town, like, I would walk around when I was, like, 14 years old, I'd sneak out of the house and, like, walk around at, like, 2 in the morning without a fear or a care in the world, and honestly,
Mhm.
I wouldn't see anybody except for the people that I was sneaking out with. Like, it was such a safe, quiet community where things like this just, like, do not happen,
Yeah.
and for it to slowly sorry, I choked on my spit there for a second. Uh, for it to slowly become, like, less and less safe is, like, really a bummer for me to see because, I don't know. It's just, like, a loss of innocence of, like, my childhood. Like, I always think, like, "Oh, worst case scenario, I could move back home and, like, raise Ollie there because it's such a safe area and such a safe place." And now I'm like, "Is it? It's not." Like, there have been multiple murders that have taken place there in, like, recent
Yeah.
years, and it's very, very weird.
Nowhere is
Um,
safe,
nowhere
essentially.
is safe.
That's the small town murder, like, theme is
Yeah.
when you think you're safe in these little idyllic white picket fence places and you're not.
Yeah. Um, but, like, yeah, I don't know. It might as well live somewhere exciting if you're gonna deal with murder, and Davis is
Mhm.
not exciting. So but it's just weird having that kind of squashed and like, "Oh, I can't live there. It's not safe, and it sucks." So
Yeah, and it sucks.
I mean, I love Davis, but, like, not to live forever. It's so boring.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
And
that was
shout
kind
out
of what
to
inspired me.
my, like, one of my favorite podcasts of all time, Small Town Murder. I
Yeah,
love
really
you,
good.
James and Jimmy.
Yeah. James and Jimmy. God, what a couple of
Mhm.
names. What a
They're the
pair of
best.
names.
They're the best.
I
Yeah.
like that one chose Jimmy, one chose James just for, like,
Yes.
the sake of
Contrast.
confusion. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway, is there anything else we wanna talk about?
No.
No. No.
No.
If you guys wanna know a lot about kids baseball, I'm the person to talk to, but otherwise I got jack shit. So I guess we
Yeah.
should just get going, yeah?
And I'm just in a little tornado of, like, work stress and life stress and just, like, buzzing on along here. So,
Yeah, me too.
taking a happy murder break? Question mark?
Yeah, yeah. It's been a fucking busy, crazy time. It's getting busier and busier. So yeah, if you wanna know about catering or kids
Mhm.
baseball or murder, those are the only 3 things I could talk about. I am otherwise just a void. But I guess that's it. Should we just jump in?
Let's
You wanna
do it.
start?
Yeah.
Alright, let's
Yeah.
do it.
All right. So this is a little bit long. I apologize, but I know people are always like, "Shut up, don't apologize."
Mhm.
So this is a story of the murder of Candace Hiltz, which
Okay.
happened in 2006 in a very middle of nowhere area, which I'll describe in a moment in Copper Gulch, Colorado.
Okay.
I feel like I had to do a little bit justification in each one for like, okay, the town is very small, you know, like
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I'm not making this up. And I got this case from a extremely memorable episode of Cold Justice, which is like one of my favorite crime shows of all time. Strongly recommend.
I I have stopped watching it. I just if we're gonna just real quick, I don't wanna, like, harsh your vibe here. I can't fucking watch that show anymore. They don't solve enough cases. It makes me fucking
No.
crazy.
They
It's
do
just
though. They have
I
solved a bunch.
you know what I do? I swear to God, this is so bad because I'm like the asshole who wants to know the end of the story before I get to the end so I can know if
Oh
I'm
my
gonna
gosh.
enjoy it or not. I will be like, "Oh, this episode," and I will Google it. Did they solve this case? And if it
Oh
says
my
yes,
god.
I'll watch. And if it says no, I'm like, "Fuck this, I don't need the
I
frustration."
love an unsolved mystery, so we're
Ugh,
different, and,
ugh.
they do solve a lot, of cases, so
Okay, I don't know what
got
you mean by a lot, but I'm gonna drop it. Let's go.
they s they solve a good amount, okay. So Candace, or Candy, as she's known, is 17 at this time. She had actually graduated high school super early, and, like, her little high school diploma picture, she looks like a baby.
Mhm,
And she had been attending Brigham Young University, as an undergrad through an online program. So she was set to graduate already from college at age 17.
mhm.
And she'd been accepted to Stanford Law School, so it's, like, really dope.
Yeah.
Um, so with her boyfriend, Jesse Weaver, she had a baby daughter named Paige, who was 11 months old at this time and had the neurological disorder hydrocephalus.
Oh.
So, at the time this happened, like, Candy is essentially killing it. Like, despite her super humble, very much working class background and being a single parent to, like, a special needs kid, she's
Mhm.
literally working as hard as she can to have a law career.
Yeah.
So she's killing it.
Okay.
Candy lives together with her mom Dolores in a small trailer in Copper Gulch, and here's the part where I tell you how small it is.
Okay.
Um, because they do it in Small Town Murder and in City Confidential, my other favorite show about small town murders. So I
Mhm.
felt like I had to do it. So Copper Gulch is 2 hours south of Denver and about 25 miles south of Canyon City, which has 17,000 people, but is described as the nearest city. Um,
17,000 people. I mean, it's a
yeah,
city, I guess. It's a
yeah.
small city, but it's a city.
So a nearby town has about 47 people. So Copper Gulch is like double digits around there, right?
Okay, so this is like there's a lot of towns like this when you drive through the middle of California,
Yeah,
where it's just
yeah,
like
nothing.
it's a truck stop, essentially.
Yeah, it's also some landmarks nearby include a ghost town called Buckskin Joe. It's the name of the
Oh, I
ghost
like
town.
that.
And a mountain named Poverty Mountain.
I don't like that.
Yeah. So that's just to give you a little sense of the landscape here. It's very beautiful though. It's very, wood mountainous.
Right.
So on August 15th, 2006, Jesse, the boyfriend here, comes to the trailer and finds his baby, Paige, there by herself, screaming and crying, seemingly alone, and is like, what
Mm,
the fuck, right?
yeah,
And sees a large pool of blood on the floor and blood splatter on the walls and just freaks out.
fair.
Right around the same time as he's being like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Candy's mom, Dolores, arrives and finds Candace's body essentially, I'll say very poorly half stuffed under her bed.
Oh.
Not like a great concealment effort.
So he doesn't find her, he calls, like, a family member to find her?
The mom just shows up at the same time.
That's wow,
Virtually at the same time. Yeah.
that's really weird, but
Mhm.
okay. Okay.
She had been shot, Candace had 7 times, uh,
Jesus.
including 1 shotgun blast to the face,
Oh my god.
a revolver shot to the chest, and seemingly, 5 shots from a 22 handgun to the back of her head. So seemingly at first, people think there's 3 guns used.
Okay.
There was no sign of robbery or sexual assault, just murder and someone left.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
that's
So
interesting. So no random motive. It's more of like a somebody who knew her kind of
yep.
motive.
Yep, yep,
Okay.
yep. So Jesse, the boyfriend, is very quickly cleared as a suspect, that he was not there.
Okay.
Um, but another suspect very quickly emerges. That is Candace's brother Jimmy, who's 28. And Jimmy was having a very difficult time in his life at this time. He had just, like the month before, been essentially kicked out by his wife and kids, or left by them, and was actually living in the woods behind the trailer.
Just like camping?
Yeah, essentially, because Candy had kicked him out of the house because of his unhinged behavior.
Okay.
She's got a baby, right? So she's like, "Dude, I can't."
I
Um,
this is like very parallel to my life. Like my crazy unhinged brother was like sleeping in my yard for like a long
mhm.
time. And then when I got pregnant, I was like, you "You can't do this anymore. You've gotta go."
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Jimmy also was said to be hearing voices,
Uh-oh.
and dealt with some very much severe and I think at this time unmedicated, untreated mental illness.
Okay. Yep.
Um, Unclear what, but we can figure it out.
Right.
Um, his ex-wife will later say that he was also exacerbating this mental illness because he had worked at a morgue right up until this time and was ingesting embalming fluid.
Why?
That's
Like,
not
what
going to
is
help. Not going to help.
he's not even huffing it, he's just, like, drinking it? I can't even imagine what that would do.
Just chugging it. Yeah.
That's fucking crazy.
So at first, I think he was also huffing it, but maybe
Okay.
also
He was just
um,
doing a lot with it.
doing a lot
A
of
lot
stuff.
yeah.
So at first in the interview, which you can see in the show, Candy's mom points the finger at Jimmy because after Candace was found, Jimmy is nowhere to be found. He's not like, oh no, grieving or anything, right?
Right.
He has to be tracked down and brought in for questioning. And according to the mom, Candy had recently had a huge conflict with her brother, besides the usual behavior, because of something much worse, because her dog, beloved dog Jax, had gone missing.
Oh.
I'm sorry for the dog stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a part of
Dogs
the
what you gotta
story.
do. Yep.
Yeah. This dog apparently hated Jimmy and would always bark at him when he came over. And the dog, in a recent conflict, which I'll talk about later, had bitten him in the butt quite badly.
Dude, I've had that happen to me just for standing up, and, like, a
Yeah.
dog went off on me.
Well,
Yeah.
Jax was doing this for good. He wasn't a bad dog. He had the correct instinct, I think, to do this. He was being protective.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah. So she accuses Jimmy of doing something to the dog, why he's missing.
Fair.
And later on, this is just a hint of how weird this case is. Later on, Dolores will deny describing this conflict, even though she's literally on tape describing it on video.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So that's just a little like I'm kind of dropping a hint, but like basically Dolores is gonna do a 360 or no, 180.
180. Yeah.
360 is all at the circle. No, she's gonna do a 180 and completely flip and say Jimmy's great.
Yeah.
Later on.
Okay. I love that
Okay.
you talked yourself through that, like, quietly. I'm leaving that in.
Yeah, that is a circle.
The whole circle. Okay, okay,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. After Candy is found dead, Jax will sadly be found near the house, and he had been shot to death with a 22 caliber gun. So it's the same one of the guns that was used to kill her.
Okay. So it's
It's
yeah,
linked. Yeah.
it's definitely fucking linked. Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
At at the time, Jimmy was and we'll circle back to this, Jimmy was, like I said, actively, hallucinating and hearing voices, according to people
Mhm.
close to the family. A close friend of, Candy's actually said later that at this time, he, quote, "didn't know what was going on," which can be used both for and against him later.
Yeah, okay.
He was admitted to a mental hospital, I think on his own will, shortly after the murder and has been there ever since. That's also kind of a spoiler.
Oh, so he's been there ever since, like, so he's never come
Parked.
out.
No, nope.
Okay.
So a few days later, after the murder, the family decides they are not convinced of Jimmy as a suspect, and they decide to place their suspicions squarely on the police department themselves for Candy's murder.
So this whole family has some issues. I
Mhm.
it sounds to me like there's some issues, some things going on. Like,
Yeah,
weird shit.
for sure.
Okay.
According to the family and according to various reports, Candy had recently seen a police officer accepting on envelopes from drug dealers, and she was about to report a deputy for taking bribes.
Hmm.
And about a week before her murder, she got in a quote unquote verbal altercation with a one detective Tracy Hall at her home at the trailer.
Okay.
So there wasn't an official report about this visit to the home, but later on, Tracy Hall with Miss Kelly Ziegler is interviewed, and he basically says that he went there because Jimmy was suspected in a string of local robberies. So he was trying to talk to Jimmy about it
Okay.
because we'll get to the robberies later, burglaries. But he basically said Candace did like stick her head out the door and like yell at him, but it was to say like, "Leave my brother alone, stop like bothering him." Right? He's innocent.
Okay.
That was the conflict.
Okay.
It wasn't about corruption or bribes or anything.
It was just that she was defending her brother.
Yes. So the
Huh.
story, yeah.
Okay.
So the story put forward by the family is that given the circumstances, or that Candy was about to like rat out the cops, the police, led by Detective Robert Dodd, who's in charge of the investigation in Fremont County,
Mhm.
would basically killed her dog first as a warning and then killed her to silence her. And this is what
That
the family's, like, hard line on this.
this is what they think, like, to this day.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So this, things get wild when in December 2016, boop, 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 10 years later after the murder, Rick Ratzlaff of Canyon City buys an abandoned personal storage unit where the payments had lapsed. I guess you can just do that sight unseen, just buy whatever's in a storage unit, kind of like a fun mystery box.
Oh, yeah, they have, like, a TV
Yeah.
show about that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
totally a
Yeah.
thing.
Super weird, but he does that. He buys a bunch of units up.
Wait, who did
And
this? Who bought it?
just a guy named Rick.
Oh, so a guy named
Rick
Rick, okay.
Ratzlaff, yeah, and he gets into one and finds that it once belonged to Detective Robert Dodd, who was in charge of this, previous investigation,
My
and once
eyes
he
are
get
getting so wide. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
and once he gets into the unit, he finds boxes and boxes of what looks like murder case evidence, basically,
Mhm.
and he reports what he's found to police and the media and the family, and it just blows up. It's a huge story in this very small sleepy area. And after the discovery, Detective Dodd, who's still a detective, is placed on administrative leave.
Okay.
They also, by the way, it's not really related, but they find some more boxes of evidence of his in a landfill. So this guy's just like boop, 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 just like throwing evidence anywhere
This guy's
he
just, like,
wants.
doing his thing. He's just
Hmm.
wilding
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Okay,
So the big confusion here is that this is first reported to be definitively evidence in Candace's case.
okay.
Um, Later on, though, we figure out, and they can go through this in detail, object by object, box by box in Full Justice.
Uh-huh.
The stuff was stuff they bagged in the woods when they were searching for Jimmy. So it's essentially just random junk from the fucking woods, but it was part of the investigation because they weren't sure if it was like part of his like campsite or not.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And Dodd, this detective, just like should have gotten rid of it, but he just didn't because he's lazy and bad at his job.
So it wasn't anything that was hidden or unknown about, it was just
Well, he didn't register it, so it was kind of hidden, but it was also pointless.
okay. That's weird, though. Like,
It
what would
is weird.
be like, why would you do that?
He's
He's just
just bad at his job, I think.
he's just a lazy shithead.
Yes. So the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, launches an investigation into Dodd and ultimately charges him with mishandling evidence and accessing the Hiltz case file to alter records.
Wait, what?
Yeah, and I'll explain that in a minute, which it sounds very bad, right?
Yes.
In 2018, he was convicted of on all those charges. I'm not sure what he got, but I don't think he's a cop anymore. Like he's
At least, yeah,
at
yeah.
least, yeah. What's the word? Uh
He's
Anyway.
been debadged. I don't know.
Yeah,
I can't think of
something
it
like that.
either. Yeah.
Yeah. So the stuff in the storage unit was, like I said, revealed to just be improperly handled, but not like incriminating in the case, not key evidence in the case anyway.
Yeah, it's not really
Um
pertinent.
what's up with him changing the records? So Dodd, at least on Cold Justice, claims that this was him trying to go, and this a couple other people confirm this from other directions, that this was
Mhm.
actually him trying to go in and retroactively document an account for the shit in the storage unit boxes. So he was essentially trying to go in and cover the tracks of his sloppy work to avoid these charges.
Wait, what?
Yeah, so if he had documented the stuff in the storage unit in a specific way, then he maybe wouldn't have gotten hit with all these charges. So he was trying to like cover his own ass on the junks in the boxes.
Gotcha. But why okay. I kind of understand, but, like, why not just throw it away?
Yeah, again, it's very stupid, but
Yes.
why did he keep it at all? Why didn't he just throw it
Yeah.
out? You know, if it was not like registered or whatever as evidence, just throw it
Just
away.
throw it out. It never
Uh,
existed. Like, what's the
exactly.
problem?
It's
Okay,
still
yeah. I'm
it's yeah, you
really
can see why
confused,
people
but
got
it's fine.
super suspicious.
Yeah.
And as much as I felt like so I have a lot more stuff to say about Jimmy here to close. But
Okay.
as much as I fully understand the family's distrust of law enforcement, especially after the storage unit thing, they jump all over it in a way that is like not accurate. And again, we all know that cops are fully capable of both murder and covering up murder. So it's not to say that they can't, but
Yeah.
in this case, the evidence just doesn't totally support this, and it's so heavily leaning towards Jimmy. Yeah, I'll get into it, but like the mom, Dolores, directly saying, I didn't say that, that's a lie. And they show her on tape saying the thing, and you're like, oh God, it's so painful because she's clearly just trying to protect her son. And I get it, but it's like, dude, like your delusion is like on TV.
that's weird. This
Yeah.
whole thing is super fucking weird.
It's really weird, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so although his mom, or their mom, Dolores, and the family emphatically claim as one of their big points that Jimmy wasn't violent, he wasn't a violent guy, as a reason why it couldn't have been him. Jimmy's ex-wife reports numerous times when he physically attacked her before she ultimately left him. And Jesse Weaver, the boyfriend, said that literally like the day before the murder, Jimmy tried to stab him.
Whoa, okay, so he's on, like, a violent bent, like,
Yes,
something's
and
going on.
getting more and more violent as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it's escalating,
it
exactly.
really
And
is,
then
yeah.
there was, what's it called? Jimmy and Candy were actually 2 of 7, siblings.
Oh,
Um, and when one of their brothers, Nicky, was over at the house very recently before the murder, Jimmy was attacking him and physically, Darth Vader style, had him held up onto the wall by the neck and was, like,
holy
choking him out.
shit.
And that's when Jax, our fucking hero dog here, bit him in the butt, right?
Okay. He did
Um,
it. Come on, Jimmy did it. Why is the family so hung up? It sounds to me like this family, and I don't want to talk shit, but, like, if I'm just being real, they
yeah,
sound super dysfunctional
yeah,
and like they're just doing whatever they can to, like, excuse the bad behavior of this one problematic sibling
yeah.
instead of just being like, "It was probably him because that's what makes sense."
Yeah, and if you didn't need it, if you probably don't need more evidence against Jimmy, but here's even more.
Okay.
In in Cold Justice, they also detail all the evidence, because they say, "Oh, he didn't have guns. He didn't have access to guns," but they go
Mhm.
through all the burglaries he was suspected of, because that's essentially what he was living off of, was going through
Right.
people's, like, cabins, and, like, there's a lot of, like, vacation homes out there,
Oof.
and so he was going through people's cabins and stealing whatever. And in one of the burglaries that was really close to the trailer, DNA from a whiskey bottle at the scene completely matched him. So it's
Okay.
like kinda what's it called? Shut I have no words today.
Open and shut. Open
Open
and
and
shut.
shut case that he did it. It's very straightforward. And in that, the gun was used, the 22, or no, not the 22. Anyway, one of the guns was stolen from that robbery that he used, ultimately for the murder.
Okay.
And another robbery, the
Hmm.
rifle was stolen using matching used the one used on Candace. And this rifle was found chopped up in the woods using a hatchet that we also know that Jimmy stole. They find the
So why is
hatchet.
this guy not in prison?
They also bring in a ballistics expert that shows that it was not 3 types of guns, but actually 2, and the rifle was you in the commission of the murder, 2 different types of ammo were fired from the same rifle, which fits with Jimmy because he was stealing random mismatched types of ammo, right?
Oh my god.
Mhm.
Come on.
There's also, I'm not even done with the evidence.
My
There's
god.
also a bone fragment that matches Candace. They do the test for the first time on Cold Justice, and that bone fragment matching her was found in the woods, basically at Jimmy's, like, campsite with his, like, a blanket.
Jesus fucking Christ, dude. Come on. Like,
And
does he have
then
a flashing neon sign that he walks around with as well?
yeah,
Like, Jesus, dude, what the fuck?
yeah, and then I got so frustrated too with this show at watching the family has been openly spreading rumors around town about the stuff that was found in Dot's storage unit. For instance, they said the blanket that was found was the one under Candy's body, which it wasn't. They show the crime scene photo and the blanket, right? They're like, it's not. It's not the same blanket. Or they say the small hatchet that they found in the unit was the one to kill the dog when we know the dog was shot,
So
not hatcheted.
it sounds to me like they're more concerned with covering up his shit than they are with solving her murder.
Yeah, they're
Or
on
are
a
they just mentally, like, unwell? Like, I can't tell.
I don't know. It's so frustrating, especially when Kelly Ziegler, like, lays out the, like, case, or, like, tells him, like, "Look,
Right,
it's
yeah.
fucking Jimmy, dude, that did this." And the mom is like, "Nope, absolutely not." And you're just like, "Oh my god." It's so frustrating because, I mean, I think some people can be in denial so hard that they just, like, live in that, and then it becomes true to them. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
it is, I think it is true to her, and I also think they talk about in the show how this is an area with a lot of distrust for law enforcement, and that's fair. We don't trust them, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's totally fair. But, like, I think they took that as, like, the scapegoat. It's really interesting to side with the cops. That's why I kind of thought this was an interesting case, because it's like, there's no other time when I'm like, no, the cops are correct. Like, there's like,
Yeah,
it's
that's
weird.
really yeah. Like, I hate to be like, what the fuck?" But, like, here's the thing, like, I don't care who did it. I just whoever did it should be held responsible, and this family is, like, actively shooting themselves in the foot by being, like,
Yeah.
hyper focused on the cops when the cops pretty clearly didn't do it. Like, why would the cops do it? Like, there's not even, like, a good enough motive, to
No.
be honest, and honestly, like, we all know you don't necessarily need that, but when you have 2 possible suspects and all signs point to one, like, what is
Yeah.
wrong with you that you can't just be like, "Okay," like, that's obviously the situation. It's
Yeah,
really
and also, yeah, it's maddening, and to have her on tape saying one thing, and she's like, "Oh, no, that's not true," and I'm like, "Well, fucking show her the tape." Like, like,
yeah,
why did you say that? It's really crazy, and I think people's first impressions and reactions to things can often be true, right? Like, kind of revealing.
yeah,
Um, Anyway, and also I think this is an interesting case too because it raises the idea that sometimes families can hurt more than they can help, right? In these cases, and sometimes they get so, especially in a case where there's not justice, there's not like an investigation, and there's not like a full like attention being given to it. The families can kind of take shit and run with it and create
mhm,
rumors and create problems. Like they really can. I mean, I remember like this is totally different because granted, I believe Kendrick Johnson was murdered for the record.
yeah, likewise.
However, so just to say that straight up, but I will say his family did fuck up some shit in that, like, remember in that investigation or in looking into it because they would post things that were
Yeah,
not true, or they would say that the autopsy pictures were evidence of this and this and this, and it was like, "No, it's mid-autopsy," right? And, like, so
right.
they would create problems and rumors sometimes where I'm like, oh, sometimes a family can be so determined to get one side or one narrative out that they actually, like, ruin shit.
Right, and it's like I get it, you're frustrated, you're upset, but, like, you've gotta check yourself because
Yeah.
when you're this involved in a case, you've got to, like, hold your tongue a little bit. People always get really mad at the cops for not sharing information, but oftentimes it's the right move. It's, like, one of the few things that I think they do properly. Like, when you look at, like, the Delphi murders and shit like that, it's like they didn't give away anything because they were, like, circling around a suspect or a number of suspects for a long time, and the closer they played things to the vest, like, the more chance they had of actually, like, not this stuff can come up in trial later. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? The misinformation, the rumors, the bullshit, it's
Mhm.
gonna muddy the waters and make
It
it
makes your
harder.
case look bad.
It
Yeah.
does, and I think
Yeah.
that that's something that families need to remember, even though I do not blame them at all and completely understand where they're coming from. It's not,
Yeah.
like, the best way to behave.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's this wild case. Just to close on 2 quick depressing notes. So, obviously, as I already kind of gave away, Jimmy has not been arrested in Candy's murder, and I'm pretty sure it's because he's already confined to a mental institution and because he was found not guilty by reason of insanity for the burglaries.
Okay. So it's
So,
like, what's the point?
there's kind of a precedent that he would probably get not guilty by reason of insanity, especially, I mean, granted, in America, we don't like to even give that out, but this guy has been documented with this history. He's in a mental institution. Like, I mean, I kind of agree in the sense of like, if he's going to stay there, just leave him there, you know?
Right, and it's not like the
But
family like, who would they be solving this for? The family? The family won't believe them even if that's the case.
yeah.
You know what I
And
mean? And it's like
exactly. Yeah, there's not a lot of motivation to do it, and I think Kelly Ziegler was actually really nice about it, like, because she's kind of like, "Look, your goal should just be fighting to keep him where he's at and not in prison, because that's better for him," you
right,
know?
and so
Like,
what good would this do? And it
we're
doesn't sound like he's gonna be getting out anytime soon, and if he is, then
no.
it's, like, time to cross that bridge. But did she, like, take it to the prosecutor to find out if they would even, like, consider it, or were they basically
Yeah, I
like,
think
"We're"
she did, but they said no.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, what do you need? You need like,
No, I
people have been
know.
prosecuted far more, far more for far less. That's
Yeah, I
pretty
mean, on
wild.
the one hand, it's surprising because people in America love to prosecute mentally ill people for whatever the fuck
Prosecutor's
and
gonna
throw them
prosecute,
away.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but on the other hand, it's like, I think there's not the family is not the one trying to rally the cause.
mhm,
It's like, okay, and I think that if they're gonna keep him in the mental institution, fine. Like, just leave him there.
right,
Um, it's probably the
yeah,
best place for him. Obviously, we know jail does not help your schizophrenia, like,
no,
or whatever you
no,
have.
yeah,
And just to end on a really depressing note, to depress us all, Candy's daughter Paige tragically died at age 7 of her brain condition. So
ugh, that's fucked. When you said that, I was like, "That is fucking
really sad.
gnarly," like, I
Yeah.
know it's gnarly, like, that
Yeah.
makes me really sad to hear
Yeah.
that, that's really shitty, that's really fucking unfortunate.
There we go.
Ugh,
That's a weird
alright,
case. So
yeah, that's fucked up. That's really fucking frustrating is what it really is, more than
yeah,
anything, like, that makes me
I
really
love
mad.
to frustrate you with an unresolved case.
You
I mean,
do.
it's not really a mystery though, but it is unresolved.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, okay. I have this story. It's really weird. I had a hard time kind of putting together how all of these people are related, but I do know some of the important relationships between these people. So I am doing the Coons family murder,
Mhm.
Kunz. I have a family friends whose last name is Kunze, and I was like, "Oh, it's kind of creepy how like similar this is." But
Mm.
and also they live like in Texas on a farm kind of in the middle of nowhere, and I was like, "There's a
Oh,
lot of similarities here." But I
okay.
decided to do it anyway.
Oh my
It
god, sorry, I know this case, like, I just Google image searched and I'm like, "Ah!"
Yeah, so this is a really fucking weird uh weird kind of story. And this takes place in 1987 outside of Athens, Wisconsin.
Okay,
So we're dealing with Wisconsin murder here. It's not Athens, Georgia, it's Athens, Wisconsin. And in any case, okay, this is the Coons family murder. And this family is really fucking weird. They're all pretty old at this point. We have Clarence Coons, who's 96, Irene's Coons, who's 81, Marie Coons, who's 72, Helen Coons, who is 70, Randy Coons, who's 30, and I believe Kenny Coons was 32, I want to say. I think
okay,
he's the older brother. So Kenny and Randy are brothers. Helen is their mother, Clarence is their uncle, and I think the other two people are aunts, I think.
okay,
So this family moves onto this farm. They basically were taken advantage of. There were developers and people that owned this land, and they were sold this land with the promise of like being able to farm and being able to like, kind of homestead. And when they get there, this land is completely unfarmable. It's
okay,
like tons of like tree stumps and cut down shit. It's all fucked up. So they can't really make any money here. They were taken by somebody who sold them the shitty land and ran off with their money essentially, and it's super fucked up. And this happened like in the 1900s, back when like we didn't really have a court that there was no Judge Judy, let's say. So they couldn't
mhm,
really get their shit back. So this family lived in what was considered ramshackle, which is a great way to put things. Um, but it was a very small cabin in the woods. They kept to themselves. They didn't talk to other families. They were kind of outcasts. They would come into town to like buy things and, get food or whatever. But I think they mostly lived off of like government assistance or possibly, I don't really know. Maybe a couple of
disability or something.
yeah, random jobs here and there.
Yeah, yeah,
So, in 1933, when Helen Coons was 15 years old, she became pregnant. And she uh, said that it was a neighbor. She accused a neighbor, Frank Gums, of raping her.
okay,
He was put in prison for a number of years for this. He was convicted and ended up dying shortly after getting out of prison. And one of the reasons that he was convicted was because Helen was able to recount what happened so vividly that the
mm,
judge at one point was like, there's no way that she could imagine something like this with this much detail, this much like real to life kind of shit, right? I don't think the judge said shit, but you get
yeah,
the idea. He was basically like, no young 15-year-old girl would dream up this trauma. So she becomes pregnant, has the kid. I think by the time this story takes place, she's 70 years old. He would be 55. He's probably not living at the house. But
right,
she is living in this shack with her siblings and her two sons. And these two sons also don't know who their father is. And this will come up later. They have some inklings, perhaps, but none of them know. So we're in July of 1987, and Kenneth, the older of the two sons, goes, I think he actually had a job. So I know that like at some point he got a job. I don't really know what they did to make ends meet prior to the sons getting old enough, but he's in town, he goes to work. He comes back um the morning of July 5th. I'm not sure if he's working overnight or what. I assume he is. So he comes back that morning and he finds a fucking bloodbath in his house. His aunt Irene is like dead in the doorway.
oh
Um,
my gosh,
yeah, Clarence and oh, Marie was dead in the doorway. Clarence and Irene are also found, and then Randy is found, I believe, in the kitchen, slumped over, dead. They
Okay.
all had either one or two, there's conflicting stories, but either one or two 22 caliber bullet holes in their heads. So they're all shot like double tapped execution style.
Holy shit.
Yes.
Brutal.
hmm So uh Clarence was actually in his bedroom, is where they found Clarence. Irene was in an armchair. So it seems kind of like a sneak attack. Like nobody expected this to happen. So pretty fucking crazy. Um he calls the police. The police come and they start gathering evidence. And they also are all like, where's Helen? Like,
Yeah.
where's Kenneth's mom? Everybody else is dead and Helen is missing.
Yeah.
So there's also not a lot of evidence. There's tire tracks and there are the bullet casings. And that's really it. There's no footprints. There's no, we weren't in the age of DNA like we are now. So even if there were like if there was DNA, they didn't necessarily collect it. Like this is a tiny, tiny town. It's called Wausau. It's outside of Athens, Wisconsin, which is not a huge place. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're just in the middle of nowhere in the country, and these people are even farther removed than the townspeople that they deal with.
And also, I want to say, because it's the theme of this week, like I find rural places far removed from any town or city fucking terrifying. Like,
They're so terrifying.
don't live there.
No,
Don't.
I mean, and this could not be more of like a tiny town, and these guys live
So scary.
outside of that. They're like so far removed. Even their neighbors who are like, acres away from them, they all talk to each other, but nobody talks to this family. Like they're so
Yeah.
fucking they're
So isolated.
outcasts among outcasts. Yeah, isolated
Yeah.
beyond isolated. So, um the police go looking, but they cannot find Helen. They don't have anything to go on. They do start investigating, and one thing they think maybe it was Helen, you know? And a lot of things kind of feed into this. For instance, the family, they're outcasts, and it had been rumored forever that that guy Frank didn't actually rape Helen and that she was
Mm.
in an incestuous relationship with her brother Clarence. And
Oh.
their kids, all of their kids, including the two younger kids, Randy and Kenneth, who don't know who their father is, along with the older sibling, were all actually fathered by Clarence. And that she framed Frank because she was only 15 when she became pregnant. And so to kind of save her own, reputation, she had to make herself out to be a victim that was, raped by someone.
Yeah.
So these rumors had been swirling since basically she was 15, and some of the things that fed into that were that Helen and Clarence slept together in the same bed, and after she and
Oof.
Clarence stopped sleeping together, she was sleeping in the same bed with her adult son Randy.
I
So
mean, it's also giving a little bit of like Willy Wonka vibes, where they're all in the bed together, but like less cute and
much less cute.
more
Yeah,
gross.
because I'm going to get you into the even grosser details, so I'm glad you
Okay.
said that, because I don't think the family and Willy Wonka watched porn together.
Oh no.
But when the
Okay.
police went into the Coons family home,
Oh.
it was littered with pornography. They
Oh my
didn't have
God.
this family, just FYI, they didn't have electricity. Or no, they had electricity. They didn't have plumbing. They did not have plumbing,
Oh my God.
okay? Like I don't know where they pooped, but they didn't have fucking running
Oh,
water.
I
I
mean,
think
I
there
would
was like a
hope like
well.
the woods. I would hope outside of their house.
I hope so too, but I don't fucking know. So no
Okay.
plumbing, so no like hot showers, nothing like that. And they did have power, they had electricity, and one of the few things that they had was a television and a VCR. And they had a fuck ton of pornographic VHS cassettes
Mm,
all over the house
mm.
and tons of pornographic like magazines and materials. So something very weird is going on with this house because
And it's also a gross like house. Like if you Google it, you can see
it's an absolute
some
hoarder
interior
house.
shots. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
Oh.
fucking crazy hoarder house, no plumbing, no running water,
And
and
porn.
porn everywhere. And let's say that was the situation and these people were all unrelated. We would still be
Still
horrified.
weird. Still
These
weird.
people are all very related.
Yeah.
maybe too related, maybe more related than they fucking should be,
Oh
right?
god.
Like, what the fuck?
Oh god. And there's not even like a married couple in the mix where you could kind of say like, "Oh, that's maybe they're watching it or something."
No.
Like,
And this shit was also like in the fucking like in the living room, like everywhere. Like it was
oh
not hidden.
god.
They weren't like, "Oh, I opened this drawer and found porn." And, "Oh, I looked under the bed and found porn." They're like, "I walked in the house and like
It's
stepped on porn."
right. It's not hidden in like a
No.
private viewing environment.
No.
No.
So now we have, everybody's like, "Oh, I
Oh,
bet it was Helen." And a shopkeeper comes in, like a witness comes forward and he's like, "Oh, I talked to Helen like the day before these murders, and she came in and bought a bunch of ammunition from me, as well as I think like something for her tea. Oh no, she bought a toaster because she was like, I'm gonna fucking toast bread. Like I want the
mm,
modern amenities of a fucking toaster." So she bought a toaster and she bought 22 caliber bullets. And while she was doing this, she was telling him like, "I'm so tired of my family. All they do is watch dirty movies. Like I'm fed up with them. I've fucking had it up to here." So immediately everybody's like, "Okay, Helen killed the family and boned out. Like she killed
right.
the family and bailed." And to further add to the mystery and lack of motive or who knows, so let's say Helen did do that. Why did the cops find $20,000 in cash stashed around this hoarder house? And if it was Helen who had done it, why wouldn't she have taken the money? Because obviously she would have known about it.
Yeah, take the money and run.
Yeah, so there
Why
you go.
not?
So it's like, okay, they don't really have any fucking leads at all. They think it's Helen. They can't find Helen, but they don't really know, and it doesn't really make sense because there's no money missing. Money they didn't even know existed until they checked this house, and they're like, trash, porn, and cash. That's like all they found.
Oh my god.
So now they kind of start looking, interviewing people more, and they start talking to Kenny, and they're like, who else might it have been? And he's like, "Oh, this man, Chris Jacobs, was buying a car from my brother, and so he would have come over, and the car is, I think, gone, I think." So, and again, this is a little like muddy. There's not a ton of information about this, but essentially, he's like, "Check out this guy, Christopher Jacobs the third." So, cops start looking into it, and it turns out that Chris had been at the family farm to buy the car the night before the murders, or the night of the murders, potentially.
Hmm.
So that puts him at the house on the night of the murders. They also realize, there's tire tracks. And within the time between when this happened and when they interviewed him, he had already replaced the tires on the vehicle with new tires. So
Oh my
there's no
god.
way to tell if the old tires, if those would be the tracks of his vehicle. So they're
Okay.
like, that's sus. He
Yeah.
also had a 22 and they couldn't definitively match it, but he did own a 22. So they're like, he has a gun that matches the murder weapon. He was there, whatever. So they decide, okay, this guy has motive potentially, what they think happened. And also, PS, Helen did state that she bought those bullets to shoot birds because the birds were like fucking with their yard. And police found the 22 that belonged to the family in the house, and it was so unused, it was like dusty and had cobwebs on it. So that kind of rules that out. However, Chris also has a 22 and can't be ruled out. So what cops decide, they're like, okay, he came over to buy the car, got in a fight with Randy, murdered Randy, and then murdered the rest of the family to like cover his tracks. What I don't understand about that, if one of the women was like kind of in the hallway in the doorway, doesn't that make it sound like she answered the door and was killed first?
Yeah, it
So if
does.
he's already in the house arguing with Randy, I mean, maybe I don't know, because it doesn't say if she was shot like in the back of the head. Maybe she was trying to run out the door and got shot. But to me, it sounds more like whoever shot this family came in the front door and like shot them in
Hmm.
succession.
Yes.
Whereas what police are saying is that he got in an argument with Randy and killed him and then killed the rest of the family. So I would need a little bit more information about
Yeah.
the specifics of how the
Maybe
family
she was
got
trying to
there.
run out the front door. Is that
That's what I'm
possible?
saying. Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Like maybe she was trying to run away, but I don't know if she was shot in the back of the head or what. So it's
Right.
really hard to say. In any case, they go to trial and they arrest him. They go to trial and he is found innocent.
Oh, wow, didn't
Yeah,
expect that. Okay.
no, he was
All
only
right.
21 years old, and a lot of people believe, like, yes, he absolutely did do this, but because the family had this weird background, the incest, basically what people have come out and said is, like, this family was treated like white trash. So nobody
Mhm.
fucking cared. The jury felt like they were disgusting, not worthy of justice, so they didn't find him guilty.
Wouldn't it be the opposite though if they think so lowly of the family? Wouldn't they just wanna put him away? Like,
I don't know. I think that they were like, this family's disgusting and they probably deserved it. And the case against him isn't by any
mm.
means airtight. It's mostly
So they
circumstantial.
didn't care
So
about them the family as victims, is what you're saying?
yeah, they didn't give a shit about the
Okay,
family as victims. They were like, we
gotcha.
don't care that much about this family. We don't think they deserve justice.
Oh,
And I
gotcha.
don't think it wasn't a super airtight case. Like all they had
Right.
was the tire tracks that didn't match his new tires, and that the bullets were the same as his gun would shoot, and that he was at the house the night of the murders. But the murders could have taken place at any point. Again, I don't really know that they had like a definitive time of death that was a small enough window to say yes, it was definitely him or no, it wasn't. But anyway, the jury found him not guilty. Police did not drop it there. And
Okay.
for the next 11 years, they were looking to try to get him. Also, we can definitively say it was not Helen because very unfortunately, she was found 9 months later near a
Mm.
creek in Medford, Wisconsin.
Oh,
So, and it's really
okay.
weird, like that further, like, why was she taken? So
Yeah, so it was she was killed around the same time, but just taken somewhere else or just in a
she
different
was
location?
killed where she was taken. Like they took her and killed her out there. They
But it was
police
around the same time-ish
Yeah,
as
they
the
determined that
original
she
murders.
died like probably the same day.
She didn't, like, run away and die in some
No.
other fashion, right?
No, so then some people think like, "Oh, Chris and Helen were in on it together, and she promised him like, 'Oh, we'll split this money if you help me kill my family.'" But that doesn't really make sense because first of all, why would a 70-year-old woman and a 21-year-old man like be in on anything together? And second,
Yeah,
once again, the money wasn't taken. And
right.
you know, and it's like, so then, police are like, well, Chris did this and didn't rob them because he didn't know the money was there. He probably thought the family was just super poor and didn't even think to look around in their disgusting, like porno filled hoarder house.
Oh god.
Right. Just to be plain about it. But
Yeah.
they didn't drop it. So now they know for sure it wasn't her. They're like, this is absolutely like he fucking did it.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, everybody's still talking about the family. They're still, this family's fucking weird. Another thing was prior to this, the parents of Helen, Irene, Clarence, and Marie, so the four siblings, had her her brother, Anna's brother. So their uncle had murdered their aunt, like bludgeoned them to death.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was sent to a mental hospital, and there was another Coons brother who was already a patient there. So the
Oh.
grandparents of Kenny had already suffered tragedy with mental health issues and murder within the family.
And there's, like, several levels of, like, murder and crime and mental
Yes.
illness and
Yes. Yes.
oof.
So anyway, the tire tracks, they said that they matched his truck. Like apparently later on they found out that like the tires did match, and I guess they presented that as evidence, but he still was not found guilty because they were like, yeah, he went there to buy a car. Like that doesn't prove anything. But they were like, well, him changing the tires is suspect. So I guess that's the way it went. They were like, we do actually have it, but the prosecution presented it and they were like, that doesn't mean anything except that he was there, which we kind of already know. So anyway, fast forward to 1993, 4 years later, I think, because he was acquitted in 1989. His ex-girlfriend, Stacy Weiss, Christopher Jacobs' ex-girlfriend, comes forward with new information saying that he had confessed the murders to her in 1991.
Okay.
She this is so stupid. She said that he committed the murders to quote to prove to himself that he was a man
What?
after he fought with Randy over the purchase of the car. So she uses kind of their what they already think to be real and expands on it and is like, "Oh yeah, he was trying to just prove to himself that he was a man," which doesn't really make sense. Like
No,
that's
it's
not
very
great.
very strange.
The other thing to keep in mind is that she was facing some like robbery charges and
Okay.
so came forward with this information at just like a real opportune time. So he goes to trial. He thought that he was not ever going to have to go to trial again because of double jeopardy. But what the prosecution did is they're like, okay, we're not going to charge you with the murders of the family, but we're going to charge you with kidnapping, the kidnapping of Helen, because we never charged you for that. We only charged you for her murder and the murder of her like siblings and one of her sons. So now they charge him with kidnapping, and basically the only thing they really had on top of what they had before was this new supposed confession from his ex-girlfriend, who's trying to get out of prison time herself. But it works. He gets convicted of this kidnapping and he gets 31 years in prison.
Oh my god.
Yeah. He
Okay.
does have the possibility. He did have the possibility of parole. The jury deliberated for 10 hours. So it was pretty quick that they found him guilty. And to be honest, I kind of think he did it.
Yeah.
Like, because who else would it be? He's literally the only
The
person.
surviving member of the family, like, come on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, no, no, no. He's not a member of the family. He's the friend.
Oh,
Well,
oh,
yeah,
okay.
Kenny
Sorry.
Kenny was at work.
I
Yeah,
got
no,
them
no, no.
confused.
No,
Okay.
I know. There's a lot of people. But he was like the only person who was there. They have no evidence anybody else was ever at the farm. So I do kind of think he did it. So he gets 31 years for this kidnapping, which I think is like the most they can give him. He is eligible for parole in 2020.
Okay.
And he straight up refuses parole. He's
Oh,
like, I do not.
unusual.
Mhm.
Okay.
So he gets out or something, or is about to get out, but he gets put back into the county jail for a quote rule violation.
Okay.
So prior to this in 2018, Chris Jacobs had asked to shorten his parole or to be allowed to serve it outside of Wisconsin.
Okay.
And the judges are like, nope, we're not doing that. You can be paroled for as long as you're supposed to in Wisconsin. If you don't like that, too bad for you. So instead, he refuses parole and then gets thrown back in prison and asks to do the remainder of his time. He's like, if you're going to parole me and make me stay in Wisconsin, I'd rather just do the rest of my time because I guess at that point, you're not paroled. Like you're just released
Mm,
because you've done your time.
right.
Something. I don't know. But in any case, when asked why, he says that he's afraid of retaliation by the police should he be released. And he said that this stems from years of them harassing him, accusing him, and just relentlessly going after him over this case in like the years between the time that he was acquitted and the time he went back on trial. So I don't have a lot of information about that, but I find it really interesting that he's saying, like, I've been persecuted, like, the police are out to get me, to the point where he's like just staying in jail for like 9 more years rather than being released early and like living his life in Wisconsin with a parole officer. So the whole thing is really fucking weird. Like everybody in this case is so fucking weird. Like what is going on? It's like the most small town shit I've ever heard.
That's really weird. Yeah, and I'm sorry I conflated Chris Jacobs and Kenneth in my mind. I don't think they're like the same person.
No, it's
They're
okay.
separate
Kenneth
people.
survived and was never
Okay.
at any point like considered a suspect because he had such
Okay.
a strong
Right, right,
alibi.
right.
And I guess was
'Cause it
also like super upset when he found his entire fucking family dead,
gotcha.
at
Okay.
30 years old.
Normally that's the suspect, but it's like, okay, this
Yeah, they
random
were
random
so
other guy.
yeah, so it was just like a friend of one of the sons. And yeah, how weird, right? Like,
It's really weird and
and for the guy
creepy.
to like want to stay in prison, like, what is that about?
I don't know. Maybe because it was 2020 and it was like
Oh, that too, yeah.
oh, it's not it's actually pretty bad to be in prison then though too. So,
Yeah, no, but it was February 4th, so I think he
okay.
might have
Okay.
changed his tune had it been like, April 4th.
Right.
Um, but he was basically like, I don't trust the police to not like make my life a living hell, and if I have to
Mm,
stay in Wisconsin, I'd rather just stay in prison. But I
interesting.
feel like that's a weird rationale.
Maybe it's because he had some weird conscience moment and he knew he was guilty, so he's like, "I'll do my 30 years," which is
Dude, I
kinda
don't fucking
unusual.
know. It's weird though,
Um,
right? Like,
yeah, that is unusual.
but anyway, yeah, so that's the story. I mean, it's so strange how like small town gossip and drama can like affect the outcome of a case like this. Like this family
Mhm.
wasn't given justice. I mean, I think he probably did it. Like, but again, I
Yeah.
don't know. Like on the one hand, I'm like, oh, this family was treated poorly because they were weird. And on the other hand, I'm like, they don't really have anything besides like circumstantial evidence. They don't have any sort of proof. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean, just kind of it's him for lack of other suspects, really.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense though.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And sorry, the tire tracks were confusing because at first they couldn't prove that the ones he had matched, but then I guess later they did, but they were like, he was like, yeah, I was at their house. And they're like, well, you bought new tires, so that's suspicious. That's because you were trying to cover it. And it's like, if he had the forethought to do that, like, why wouldn't he just like literally get out of his car and like physically cover his tire tracks? You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
Like, I
That's
don't
so
know.
weird. Yeah, I just remember this case from, like, the pictures of the house and the,
So
like,
narnar.
the family, and, like, it's such a memorable family, for lack of a
Yeah.
better term.
Memorable is definitely a way to put it. Yeah.
Oof. Yeah,
Yeah.
and, they still don't deserve to be murdered, so they still should have had
No.
their cases, looked at seriously regardless of how fucking creepy they are, so,
Yeah. But anyway,
yeah.
fucking weird ass. Imagine like walking into a murder scene and having like blood spattered porno everywhere. Like, what
And
is that?
trash and oh
Trash. Yeah.
gosh.
Not good. Not good. But
No,
anyway,
no.
all right. Sorry we're a day late again, guys. I'm getting over the terrible illness. And I feel like as long as we get 2 a week out, we're
Yeah.
doing good. So
Well, we
whatevs.
might not be late,
Today's Monday. It should have gone out this morning. It's gonna go out
eh,
tomorrow morning. It'll be fine.
slightly late, slightly late. It's
We
fine.
like to keep y'all on your toes. You never know when
Yeah.
it's coming.
Yes.
Well,
Anticipation.
yeah, exactly. All right, guys, thanks for listening.
Okay.
Please like, rate, review, share with your friends and family and everybody you've ever met in your whole life. And until the next one,
Stay.
off our
Liz.
well, yes, stay off and bye.
Bye.